A few weeks ago, at the beginning of June, our media and graphics supervisor, Courtney Moulton, and I headed up north to meet up with Region C Fisheries Biologist Jake Scoville. Based out of Jonesboro, Jake knows all the best honey holes when it comes to brook trout and salmon in the fly fishing hotspot of Grand Lake Stream. We weren't the only ones enjoying the peaceful serenity of casting colorful fly line over crystal clear streams, watching salmon and trout flick to the surface hungry for our flies, and the many insects swirling through the bands of sunlight. Other anglers were there too, enjoying this important resource. Between casting some lines, enjoying moose meat tacos, and grabbing some very high quality social media content, I sat down with Jake to chat about why he's passionate about the work he does for MDIFW. My name is Katie Yates, and this is Season 6 of the Maine Department of Inland Fisheries and Wildlife's podcast, Fishing Game Changers. In this season, I'm back in the field with our talented staff to learn about what they do, why they love it, and what drives them to apply their time and talent to the Maine outdoors.
Yeah, so my name is Jake Scoville. I'm a fisheries biologist here with IFNW. And I'm a pretty young guy for the department. I think I'm the youngest biologist that we have. But yeah, I grew up in Machias, Maine, and now my office is in Jonesboro, so I'm pretty close to home. I went to Unity College and got a wildlife biology degree. Got hired on with the department, I think, 2 years after I graduated. So
pretty quick.
Yeah, pretty quick.
Jake's interest in fish and wildlife started young when he would join his father on hunting and fishing expeditions.
Some of my earliest memories were from my dad taking me out hunting and fishing. We would go to like the little trout streams and we'd catch trout. And yeah, fishing was always a staple. I remember catching my first trout, my first pickerel. We lived on a lake in the summertime, so when I was like 10 to 15 years old, during the summers I was just on the lake fishing for bass and every day. So that's all we did. So, and then when I was in college, I got busy and played sports and stuff, so I kind of didn't fish and hunt as much as I could have. And then now, as a young adult, I'm back into it more than ever. So yeah, absolutely. Some of my first memories, my dad taking me out, and I remember like catching a trout out of a stream one time and us taking it home, and I just remember that smell of the fish. And every time that I go touch a trout now, it kind of is like nostalgic.
Jake was hooked from an early age and pursued wildlife biology at Unity College because there was no specific fisheries tract.
There was no fisheries degree at Unity, so but I knew I wanted to be in fisheries, so I just took as many fisheries classes as I could, and then of course got my experience in seasonally.
He learned much of what he would use later in his career, post-grad, doing seasonal work for MDIFW and out west in Wyoming.
I think my first seasonal year here in Maine working with the fisheries guys kind of tipped me over the edge, just because we were doing so many different things and working with so many different fish species, and there's like a mystery with water too that hooks me. Like, you don't know what's in a lake or a pond. You can't see what's down there. And we were setting nets and catching these fish that weren't really supposed to be there, or there was very few of them and they're big, and it just like the mystery of not knowing what you're going to see really hooked me. So from that point on, it kind of like just took off, and I went on to work with Wyoming, and I think in Wyoming that contract gave me more diversity with different fish and different techniques of like capturing fish and sampling fish, and that probably is what helped me land this full-time job here at IFNW.
Like most of our staff, Jake's day-to-day work is seasonal, and no 2 days are the same.
Basically, day-to-day work, it's very seasonal stuff. So like in the winter, we're doing a lot of creel surveys on the ice, interviewing ice anglers. In the springtime, we can work in smelt streams, collecting smelt eggs. And then in the summer, there's a bunch of gill netting.
So wait, hold on. I don't know any of those things.
Okay, so in the winter, a creel survey is a survey just like if I were to come up to you, you were fishing, and I am a fisheries biologist. I come up and I just ask you, how many fish have you caught? When did you start and stop? And that will give us like catch rate data. In the springtime, as the ice thaws, we do a lot of smelt surveys, and we transport smelt eggs to lakes that don't have as many smelts in them. So if there's like a lake that is really lacking of smelts, we're trying to boost that population. We'll capture some smelt eggs and then put them into a lake, and then the smelts will hatch. Their eggs will hatch.
They're like a food source for other types.
For other salmon and brook trout, exactly. So we'll do that in the spring. We'll help out the hatcheries clipping fins. And then that will turn into summer where we do some bass surveys when they're on their beds, and we actually get to do some rod and reel angling for them to survey bass. There's a really low mortality rate on rod and reel surveys with bass, so that's why we do that instead of netting for them.
So you fish for them.
Yep,
and you
fish
pull
for them
up, and then the same thing where you clip the fin. And
we clip the fin, take a length, weight, and then we take scales too to age the fish so we can see how the bass are growing. It could be a slow growing lake and the fish could be really small, but it could be really old, or it could be a really good growing lake where the fish are really big but they're not that old. So it's kind of interesting to see. And then we go into gill netting, which is most of the time it's a net that we set in ponds and lakes that is going to kill the fish, and then we can take we set it for a day or 30 minutes or an hour. We'll get a sample of the population of the fish in that lake, and then we can do the same thing, gets lengths, weights, ages the fish, and we can then summarize that data and tell the story of the pond, what's going on in that pond, what's happening with the fish in that pond. Okay. So, and then in the fall we do trap netting. You went out with Liz trap netting, so you know a little bit about trap netting.
Trap netting is a technique fisheries biologists use to learn more about the health of the fish. I joined fisheries biologist Liz Thorndike trap netting a few autumns ago, and it was the basis for the very, very first episode of this podcast. You can see pictures of that day spent in the field and listen to that episode at mefishwildlife.com/changers. One of the more difficult questions I ask our staff during these interviews is, what is one of your most memorable moments? They usually have to think for a bit, and not because they can't think of any, but because they have too many to share. One of Jake's most memorable moments involves the restoration of Arctic char in one of Maine's northern ponds. Arctic char are an iconic fish found in only 14 waters in Maine. They prefer deep, cold lakes that lie at high elevation and have few other competing species. An illegal introduction of rainbow smelts at Big Reed Pond upset the delicate balance and threatened the Arctic char population. While native to the state, smelt are invasive to many waters where they do not occur naturally, and if illegally introduced, can seriously damage the natural ecosystem. MDIFW staff, along with a group of partners, reclaimed the pond in October of 2010 by eliminating the competing smelt population. Arctic char were bred from the few remaining individuals in the pond and reintroduced after the smelt were eliminated. Jake was among the crew sent to confirm that the char were in fact spawning and thriving without the competing smelt.
Some of my most memorable moments so far working with the department was this past summer. I was able to go up in the Ashland region and help them survey Big Reed Pond, which is the pond that we reclaimed a few years back. It has Arctic char in it. I was able to go in this past summer after they restocked the char, and it's been a few years, and we needed to see if they were reproducing, and we captured a bunch of adults and smaller char. So we could confirm that those char were in fact reproducing, and the lake should be back to what it has always been, just an awesome Arctic char fishery, plus with some brook trout. So that was probably my most memorable time in the field so far. It was such an important project that it was nice to just even be a part of, a small part of help saving that important population of char.
Jake loves the fact that his job can make a difference. As someone who has a deep appreciation for Maine's resources, spending almost every day he can outside, whether he's fishing, hunting, or just exploring, he loves knowing the work he does directly impacts the quality of Maine's outdoors.
Oh, my favorite thing about my job is probably just knowing that I have an impact on the fisheries resources in Maine. Like anglers, they don't really, catch and release. People think that they're doing good for a lake or whatever, and they are in a lot of times. But the one way to make an impact on the actual landscape was to become a fisheries biologist, and I'm one now, so I have an impact on what I think is right, and I can help make fishing better and protect the resource and stuff. So I think that's probably my favorite part, is being part of something that so few people are, and it's a really important job because people really like to fish, and they're an important resource for the state of Maine and all over the country, really. So that's probably my favorite part.
Join me next Monday as I chat with another one of our staff members and explore what it is that makes them a game changer. In the meantime, be sure to hit subscribe on your favorite listening app, and if you have a moment, leave us a review and let us know what you think. To learn more about this series and past episodes, visit mefishwildlife.com/changers.